I think both. So on the one hand, each of our Central East European countries indeed has our unique perspectives that are partly due to geography, where we are located. I mean, the reason why Serbia has all these interesting things is because Serbia is where Serbia is. And there are other contexts where it's not good, at least historically hasn't been good for Serbia to be where it is. But in this sense, in terms of your relations with China, it seems to be a good thing, and it seems to do something positive for your country's development. And if I would be a bit joking and cynical, then China will help you to pay for some of the infrastructure that the Germans and French haven't done so far with the EU accession possibilities. There is also in Central and Eastern Europe an important diversity, just as China, although it is a unitary state, is in many ways a diverse, big country, big power. You have also both linguistic, religious, but also political diversity. I mean, if you look at the events of the last years, at least since 2014, with the events in Ukraine, but Russia would probably say already starting with NATO's Kosovo intervention in 1999, the relations between Russia and the Western Bloc have not been excellent, and this region is kind of caught in between these two blocks, and you have and China, of course, partners economically with both of these blocks, and basically it's completely not China's interest that there would be these kind of problems, because they are obviously potentially obstacles to infrastructure projects and trade. For example, if there are wars like between Ukraine and Russia. But yes, the situation is that you have countries that are in the NATO and with quite strong Atlanticist orientation. I would include there also the Baltic states, for example, but you have also, for example, Belarus is basically in a close alliance with Russia. Of course, it is so that this cooperation between China and Central East European countries, it first of all concerns economic projects, trade, infrastructure, how to move goods from point A to point B, and I think the more I learn about these facts, the more I think that China is actually playing currently historic role here and doing another chapter of globalization, making it work. That this region wouldn't be some sort of dead end, but there would be a movement in basically all directions, and actually it is very good for Central Eastern Europe in a way to diversify, because our history is also that we have been controlled by different imperial powers. For example, the Baltic states currently are considering building a Rail Baltic modern railway from Tallinn to Lithuanian-Polish border and perhaps further. And historically, this is the backyard of Russia. This is the Russian Empire, and even the railway width is different in Western Europe and in Russia. And what I read from news that Russia wasn't very happy about this idea of Rail Baltic being built. But for us, it is good if we have connectivity in different directions, because historically our railway only took us to St. Petersburg and perhaps to Moscow, and now if we can also be connected to Western Europe and even with each other, this is a different situation, and I think that China with its own plans also currently helps this region in this sense to diversify, and this cannot be bad for us in any way. Nevertheless, I I'm raising this question whether in the long run it is possible to, let's say, separate trade and logistics from geopolitics, from geopolitical alliances, the way they are getting formed. Luckily, we haven't had to, test this in practice, but my thesis would be that they cannot be completely separated, and if let's say certain geopolitical crisis would break out, some sort of tension, for example, between the United States and China, for example, or some sort of Russian initiative in Eastern Europe that would be perceived as hostile in the West, I suspect that it will also have an impact on the cooperation between China and Central Eastern Europe. So what are expectations in my country? First of all, I don't speak, I have no authority to speak in the name of my country, but I'm also international law professor in my country, and therefore I would, when I say that we cannot separate, let's say, trade from values and from the visions of world order, then I know, for example, from the history of international law that China has in some ways issues with the West-centric history of international law, with the fact that the institutions of international law were created at the time when to some extent China's real potential and strength was suppressed and often referred to as the time of humiliation in China, the 19th century. At the same time, I think that today's world order is not only trade, it's not only logistics, it's also basically how we interpret in the United Nations Charter, and therefore I as international lawyer, I was very interested to see, for example, which countries voted how in the United Nations General Assembly resolution on Crimea, and with the majority, slightly over 100 nations calling it illegal what Russia did, but an important number of very interesting countries, including China, abstaining, and that is also an interesting perspective on something that affects the region and let's say the way rules are applicable. So my hope would be that in this sense that when trade aside, that countries in this region that have no direct stakes perhaps in places like Crimea, obviously, but when certain basic rules of international community are violated, we should all call it that way. And that therefore, if we would all get the feeling that our understanding of international law and international order is actually quite similar, trade aside, then I think it would also facilitate these relations even more and bring it to new levels and new heights. I thank you for your attention.